Kelvin Heppner with RealAgriculture down in Washington, D.C. for the Western Canadian Wheat Growers Convention, and pleased to be joined now by one of the speakers here at the convention, Elaine Kub, author of Mastering the Grain Markets, contributor to DTN. Thanks for taking the time, Elaine.
Well, it's a pleasure.
So blockchain, Bitcoin, we've been hearing a lot about these words, these terms lately. I know we've had you on RealAgriculture a couple months ago, back when I think the Bitcoin bubble was close to peaking. We've now seen things retreat when it comes to the buzz and talk out there about Bitcoin.
Yeah, absolutely. So it gets all these headlines, right? It's such an exciting bubble to see that chart dive up to $19,000 and then back down to $9,000. So it gets a lot of headlines. And I think the temptation for farmers or for grain market participants in general is to just write that off and say that does not matter. That is a bubble. It is a scam, or it's something that doesn't matter. But actually, the technology that is underlying to Bitcoin, I think, really will matter to farmers in the next few years.
Okay, we'll get to that in a moment. But first of all, just to put things in context for this bubble, what we've seen is actually unprecedented in terms of the Bitcoin market over the last number of months?
Yeah, so there's a number of bubbles. That's a pattern that happens in markets every once in a while. Humans think this is the next big thing, and they all kind of pile into a market. We saw that in spring wheat, for instance, in 2008. It went up to over $24, but that was a multiple of maybe 6 times its base price, whereas Bitcoin is more than, I want to say, 120 times its base price. When it goes up to $19,000, that was the biggest bubble that the world has ever seen. Yes.
So what does this mean for farmers? Should farmers even be paying attention to Bitcoin, or is this just something that the mainstream media likes to talk about, and apparently some ag media too?
I think farmers should feel free to continue ignoring Bitcoin. I don't think you should be paid in Bitcoin or will be paid in Bitcoin for your grain. I think it's too volatile. It's not a great system to use as currency. I think farmers should continue to ignore Bitcoin. But the blockchain is the technology that makes trading Bitcoin possible. We could use that same technology to trade grain. And so I think it would behoove farmers to learn how blockchain works, yes.
So what is blockchain? What is that underlying system that is behind Bitcoin and some of the other cryptocurrencies, but has other applications as well?
Yeah, so blockchain is kind of a simple idea. It's just a shared ledger or a shared database that shows every transaction that takes place in a certain market. For Bitcoin, that was important because this is not a currency of a government. There was very little trust in that system. So in order to build the trust, they have this shared ledger, and everybody can see what each account trades, and it can't be changed. The ledger is time-stamped, and you cannot change once a transaction has been made. So there's trust that everybody can see what has happened. So that's how they traded Bitcoin. But we could trade grain in that same way with a shared digital ledger that keeps track of all of the details of each trade. So for instance, you have a load of grain. It could be geotagged to say, where did that come from? On what date was it delivered? When did this happen to it? When did that happen to it? For grain, for commodity grain, or for any specialty crop too, this is being done. Walmart is doing this. Cargill is doing this for some of their food products. So it is absolutely being done. But for farmers to be using it, it will require companies building apps and making this available to them. Yes.
So is the benefit primarily in verification and traceability?
I think that and the efficiency of it, and maybe the current system of delivering a load of grain isn't inefficient, but the system of the industry trading large shipments, rail shipments or barge shipments, those can be very inefficient. A lot of paperwork involved in the customs paperwork and such like that. So that can be made more efficient throughout the industry. Like I said, how well that is really going to play into what a commodity farmer does for an individual load, I don't know that we need that immediately, no.
Okay. So it would fit in more of an IP type shift in the environment. It would fit in that sort of setting.
Yeah, absolutely. For those, especially we could sell directly to consumers with that information. Consumers absolutely would love to have that information. I think that would make them feel better about the local grain or the local products. They would love to have that, and hopefully they'd be willing to pay that, and you'd have a value-added premium to grain that does have an identity preservation aspect to it, or any of those details that you're willing to share digitally, instantly, efficiently.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned some of the companies that are already doing it internally. Are there platforms out there or on the horizon for farmers that we could potentially have a connection to at the farm level?
Yeah, absolutely. So Louis Dreyfus made headlines because they traded a shipload of soybeans to China. Then they did this with the help of a lot of banks, and IBM is building these systems. There are companies that are building blockchain systems for business solutions. There's also a company, an Australian company called AgriDigital, and they have built an app that farmers can use to sell directly to users, or to end users or to consumers, that then pay them using a cryptocurrency, using Ether, but then it's paid instantaneously. You don't have to wait for a bank transfer to be done. And it's a great way to go find new buyers because you take out some of that trust element. And again, you get to keep all of that data flowing digitally, instantaneously, transparently to your customers.
Okay. So what do you think is the timeline for adoption of this, and how soon do we start to see more of this, or does it go as far as blockchain? Is it just going to be more, you mentioned farmers having apps potentially geo locating where they harvested grain from and having that traceability through the whole system? Does it go as far as blockchain, or do we see a progression towards, I guess we're already seeing a trend toward more traceability, but what do you see as the timeline or outlook for this?
Yeah, the timeline is already in the past, sort of. This is happening in Australia. AgriDigital has over 1,500 participants on their blockchain system. So that is happening there. In North America, it could be ramped up very quickly. It could be such a thing as Louis Dreyfus or Cargill or any of the big companies building a system that they use to trade to their export customers, but then wanting to back to the farm load. They could be working on that right now. I don't know. I don't have that proprietary information. But it to scale that up or to scale that down could happen very fast. It could be in 6 months, and it could be today that you could go and sign up for an AgriDigital account and start trading that way. Yeah.
Okay. Is that blockchain though, or when do we define something as being blockchain? We have traceability programs and databases for certain commodities already. I know in Canada, for example, the cattle industry has a traceability database program. Where do we define? I guess that's a matter of definition then, as to where we actually get to the point of calling something blockchain.
Well, yeah. So it just depends on how that database is monitored or managed. Yeah. So if it's a database that is shared, that can be altered, and isn't shared on a specific blockchain network, then it's just a database. But if it is a database that is unalterable, so it's a shared ledger that you can't go back and change those blocks, then technically, the linguistics of this, then we call that a blockchain. Yep. Okay.
And that might be another analogy or explanation for what blockchain is. You compared it to a Google Doc. Many of us use Google Docs to share information, and except the difference there is that everybody who has access to it can usually edit it as well.
Exactly. You can go in and change it. So a blockchain can't be changed. So that's why you feel confident that you are getting the data that goes along with each trade. Absolutely.
Okay. One of the questions that a farmer asked here from the audience is, where am I going to get paid for this? And I think that's probably one of the big questions for this. What is the benefit? Is there going to actually be a financial benefit? We often talk about traceability and how customers, exporters want it, but there also has to be some premium attached to that.
Yeah, that question was really insightful. I mean, he pointed out that the grain buyers want to have that data. They want to know the sustainability, but they don't pay you for it. And that may continue to be the case for commodity grains like wheat and canola and corn. But I think there would be a possibility for specialty grains that blockchain would make this more likely for a farmer to be able to sell directly to a consumer or directly to an end user. That's his opportunity to negotiate more of that value-added price levels. Yep.
Makes you a preferred customer or client.
Yeah, makes you prefer. It's a new way to go find new customers and a new way to interact with them. Yep.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we'll definitely be paying close attention to where this is heading, and it sounds like there's lots of potential here. Elaine, thanks for taking the time again.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.